Have you ever walked into a room and felt instantly that you were invisible? That no matter how brightly the light shone somehow, you remained in the shadows, watching, listening quietly, hoping to be seen. My name is Evelyn Carter, and if you've ever felt overlooked in your own family, maybe my story will sound familiar. I grew up in a house where laughter echoed off the walls, but sometimes the echoes never quite reached me. I was the eldest daughter, the steady hand, the silent helper, the one everyone trusted to just be okay. For years, I believed there was a kind of safety in being reliable. I got good grades, did what I was told, and stayed out of trouble. My parents would smile at my report cards and say, "That's our Evelyn, always dependable." Meanwhile, my little sister Madison danced through life like she owned the sunlight, and my parents lit up with pride at every step she took. It wasn't that they didn't love me, it was more like they forgot to notice I needed loving in a different way. And so I became a fixture, useful, solid, quietly taken for granted. It didn't hurt all at once. It was more like a slow drip, a missed birthday here, a quiet sacrifice there, a conversation where my voice faded into the background. I told myself it was just the way things were. After all, every family has its favorites, its forgotten, its roles carved out so early you barely remember choosing them. But deep down I wondered what it would be like to be seen. Not as the strong one, not as the fallback, but as simply Evelyn. Everything changed the day my sister Madison announced her engagement. The news exploded across social media in a flurry of professional photos, sparkling rings, and perfect smiles. Friends and distant relatives flooded the comments with congratulations. But when the phone finally rang for me, it wasn't an invitation, it was an explanation. "I'm so sorry," Ev, my mother said gently. "The guest list is tight. We just can't include everyone." There was room for neighbors' old friends, even Madison's childhood dog, but not, it seemed, for her only sister. I wish I could say I took it well. I told myself I was used to it, that I'd always been the sturdy bridge everyone else walked over to reach where they wanted to go. But the truth is, it stung. Not just because of a wedding, but because it confirmed a quiet fear I'd carried for years, that in my own family I was the extra piece, the afterthought, the one left watching from the sidelines, while the real story unfolded. What happened next at Madison's wedding, in the messy days that followed, and in my own journey to reclaim my worth, turned out to be the greatest, most unexpected turning point of my life. It's a story about heartbreak, about laughter, about learning to stand up even when you're tired of standing alone. And maybe, just maybe, it's a story that will remind you that quiet voices can shake the world too. So if you've ever felt invisible, forgotten, or just quietly unremarkable, stay with me. Because this is not just a story about weddings and family drama. It's a story about learning to see yourself, to step into your own light, and to build a life that is fiercely, joyfully your own. Ready? Let's begin. When I was growing up, our house was full of little unspoken rules, ones you never questioned, only learned to live with. Madison, with her wild ideas and fearless energy, was celebrated for every leap, every experiment, no matter how messy the results. If she wanted to try ballet for 2 weeks and then quit for soccer, my parents would say, "Let her find her passion." But when I asked to join the school debate team instead of continuing piano lessons, I was told, "Don't rock the boat, Evelyn. You're so good at what you do." It seemed that in our family, risk was a gift reserved for the favored. One spring, Madison's science project fell apart the night before the fair, paint everywhere, tears in her eyes. My mother stayed up with her until 2 a.m, remaking a volcano out of papier-mâché. Madison won 3rd place, and my parents posted photos all over Facebook. The year before, when I'd quietly brought home the 1st place trophy in the same competition, I got a "That's nice, honey," and it was placed on a high shelf out of sight. Sometimes it felt like applause was saved for the loudest dreams, while quiet effort faded into the wallpaper. The contrast didn't end at schoolwork. Madison's birthday parties were legendary, ponies in the backyard, clowns, treasure hunts, a house filled with laughter and magic. For my 12th birthday, I asked for a sleepover with 3 friends. But that same weekend, Madison decided she wanted a party too. My parents postponed mine, promising we'll do something later. Later never came. Instead, I found myself helping to decorate for Madison's big day, watching her blow out the candles while I quietly sliced the cake. It was then I learned that sometimes the love we crave is given on someone else's terms. It's easy as a child to think that love is measured in presents or praise, but growing up in the Carter house taught me that affection can be a subtle tide, sometimes rising, sometimes receding, and not always landing where you hope. Looking back, I can see my parents were just doing their best trying to manage two very different daughters in a world that never slows down. But their double standard carved a deep line in my heart, one that whispered, "You must be perfect to deserve attention. You must not need too much." Here's the truth I wish I'd known sooner. Every child, quiet or bold, wants to be seen not just for their successes, but for their struggles, their fears, and even their failures. The mistake my parents made was thinking stability meant I didn't need anything at all. But even strong bridges need maintenance. Even the dependable need a soft place to land. That lesson stayed with me quietly, shaping the way I approached every challenge, every risk, and every chance to speak up for myself. As I got older, I started to notice these small divides more sharply. The pattern became clearer each year, and it slowly wore me down, even if I kept smiling through it. Still, I hoped maybe in some important moment, things would finally be different. I clung to that hope, not knowing that everything would change with just one phone call. And that phone call, as you'll see, was about to redraw every line in the story of my family. The morning I learned about Madison's engagement wasn't special or dramatic. I was scrolling through my phone on a rainy Saturday, sipping coffee in my favorite worn armchair, when her news appeared. He asked, I said yes. Her smile glowed in a flurry of carefully curated photos. Her hand in Tyler's, a dazzling ring, the Seattle skyline behind them. My parents had commented within minutes, pouring out their pride and excitement for the world to see. My own phone stayed silent, save for a few texts from friends who had seen the post and assumed I must already know every detail. It stung in a way I didn't expect. I wasn't angry, not really, just hollow. There's a strange ache that comes from realizing you're the last to hear about milestones in your own family. I tried to brush it off, told myself they were probably just caught up in the whirlwind. But hours later, when the phone finally rang, it was my mother's voice, soft and apologetic. "Evelyn, sweetheart, I know you've seen the news about Madison and Tyler. We're over the moon." She hesitated, and my heart filled the silence, sensing what was coming next. "I wanted to talk to you about the wedding," she said. Her tone shifting, careful, almost rehearsed. "You know how venues are these days, so limited, and Tyler's family is just enormous. We're trying to keep it intimate, just the absolute closest people. I hope you understand." She assured me they'd be live streaming the whole event, so I wouldn't miss a thing. There was room for neighbors, for old family friends, for the Scott family's distant cousins. Even Tyler's childhood golden retriever had made the cut. But not me, her only sister. I listened in silence, numbness settling in. I wish I could say I protested, that I fought for my place. But sometimes when you've spent years being the background, you start to believe that's where you belong. I swallowed my hurt, said congratulations, and hung up staring out at the gray city as the rain traced patterns on my window. That evening, I cooked myself dinner, poured a glass of wine, and watched the world celebrate Madison's happiness through Instagram stories and Facebook posts. Each smiling face felt like another layer of glass separating me from a life I thought I was part of. It's hard to describe the loneliness of being left out by the people you love most. In that quiet, I realized the pain wasn't just about a wedding. It was about all the times I'd been asked to step aside, to be supportive, to celebrate from the wings. There's a lesson here, one I'm still learning. It's okay to want to be included. It's okay to feel hurt when you're not. Pretending you don't care doesn't protect you. It only builds higher walls around your heart. In the days that followed, I tried to carry on as usual. I went to work, met deadlines, nodded politely when coworkers asked about wedding plans. But a small, steady ache lingered beneath every routine. I wondered if anyone would notice if I simply disappeared from these moments. And just when I thought I could settle back into the rhythm of invisibility, something happened that would change the course of everything, proof that even the quietest people can find themselves at the center of a storm, ready or not. It's strange the things you do for family, especially when nobody's watching. Before Madison's engagement, I'd become an expert at quiet sacrifices. There were late-night drives across the city to bring her a forgotten textbook, and afternoons spent editing her college essays while she chased new dreams. When Mom was recovering from surgery, it was me who cooked, cleaned, and made sure she took her medication, never asking for help or thanks. Even when Dad lost his job for a while, I picked up extra shifts, quietly slipping money into the household account, pretending it was a bank error when Mom asked. These moments didn't come with applause or acknowledgement. They were simply woven into the fabric of our family. I remember one winter when Madison's car broke down on the way home from a party. She called me at midnight, crying in the cold. Without a second thought, I grabbed my coat and drove 40 minutes through sleet to pick her up. She slept most of the ride, and by morning she was already posting about how lucky she was to have the best friends ever, not a word about her sister. It hurt, but I told myself that's what family is for. It's easy to believe that being the dependable one means you don't need support. My parents trusted me to always have it together, rarely checking in on how I was truly doing. I was the family's silent safety net, catching everyone else before they could fall. But as the years passed, the weight of that role grew heavier. The more I gave, the more invisible I felt. Sometimes I wondered if anyone would notice if I stopped catching, if I let myself stumble just once. But habits, especially those built from love and duty, are hard to break. Looking back, I realized that selflessness, though beautiful, can be a double-edged sword. When you pour yourself into others without pause, you can lose sight of your own needs. There's nobility in being reliable, but it's not sustainable if you're empty inside. That winter night, as I watched snowflakes melt on my windshield while Madison slept, I promised myself I'd learn to draw boundaries someday. I didn't know how or when, but I sensed my story had to change for my sake as much as anyone else's. A small lesson I carry with me is this: love should not mean erasing yourself for someone else's comfort. True connection is built on honesty, and it's okay to ask for help, to want recognition, to draw a line and say, I need this too. Family can be a beautiful anchor, but only if it doesn't drag you under. That awareness was only just beginning to bloom in me, setting the stage for what would come next. As Madison's wedding day crept closer, I found myself drifting between memories of sacrifice and the reality of my new outsider status. The ache of exclusion grew sharper, but it was joined by a quiet resolve. Perhaps for the first time, I was ready to step into the light, even if my family couldn't or wouldn't see me there. What happened at the wedding would put all my silent choices and my new boundaries to the ultimate test. When the invitation to Madison's wedding finally arrived, it wasn't a delicate envelope with shimmering calligraphy or a keepsake to tuck away in a drawer. Instead, it was a brief impersonal email from a company called Ever After Events. Join us for Madison and Tyler's special day livestream access below. A Zoom link, a date, and a password. That was it. There were no handwritten notes, no personal touches, just a sterile digital receipt for a moment I'd spent my life imagining I'd share in person. At first, I stared at the screen thinking maybe there was a mistake. Maybe a real invitation would follow, but nothing came. Telling people about my attendance was its own awkward challenge. Friends at work asked, "What are you wearing to the wedding?" or "Are you giving a toast?" Their faces fell when I explained I would be watching from my living room. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Robbins, paused when I told her, searching for the right words before settling on, "Well, that's modern, I suppose." In a culture where family milestones are meant to be shared, where photos fill mantles and stories fill holiday dinners, being left out felt like a secret I was supposed to carry with a smile. The day of the wedding arrived with a heavy sky and a restless wind. I dressed up anyway, just a little, hoping it might make the occasion feel special. I even poured a glass of wine, determined to celebrate Madison's happiness from afar. As the live stream flickered to life, I watched a carefully decorated venue fill with guests, most of whom I didn't know. I recognized a few faces, family friends, distant relatives, even Madison's college roommate's boyfriend. They laughed, hugged, and took photos together. But for me, the screen was a window, not a door. I could look in but never step through. There's something uniquely painful about witnessing joy you're not allowed to touch. I realized that live streaming, while practical, couldn't bridge the distance of not being chosen. In that moment, I thought about all the people who, for one reason or another, have watched life from the sidelines. Siblings excluded from celebrations, friends left off guest lists, colleagues overlooked for promotions. It's a quiet ache, but a common one that rarely gets spoken aloud. We tell ourselves we're fine, that it doesn't matter, but deep down, we all want to belong. The lesson I took from that day was simple but profound. Being present is not the same as being included. Technology can offer a view, but not a voice. It was a gentle push for me to start searching for spaces where I truly belonged, where my presence wouldn't be an afterthought, but a welcome addition. As I logged off and the images faded, I felt both lighter and more determined. I didn't know it then, but the cracks in my old identity had begun to let a little light in. What happened next wasn't part of anyone's plan, least of all mine. But life, I was beginning to see, has a way of opening doors just when you think everyone is closed. And the next door, the chaos at the wedding broadcast for all to see, would change everything I thought I knew about my family and about myself. From my quiet living room, I watched the wedding unfold like a movie I wasn't quite part of. The camera panned across white roses and twinkling lights, guests chatting and sipping champagne. There was Madison, radiant in her gown, her smile bright but strained at the edges. I spotted our parents in the front row, Mom looking regal, Dad fidgeting nervously. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I was really there, until the camera cut to a wide shot, and I recognized faces of people I barely knew, mingling where I'd always thought I'd stand. It was a strange, bittersweet feeling, proud of my sister, but hollow inside. The ceremony began smoothly enough, with the officiant sharing stories of love and growth. Madison's vows were polished, and Tyler's voice shook as he spoke from the heart. But then, as the reception kicked off, the mood changed. During the best man speech, a college friend of Tyler's named Greg, a secret slipped out. Greg, tipsy and grinning, mentioned the wild bachelor party in Vegas, and that thing with the kittens. Laughter turned to shocked silence. I watched as confusion clouded Madison's face and Tyler's jaw clenched. The guests shifted awkwardly, whispers rippling through the crowd. The tension was palpable even through a screen. Greg, oblivious, kept rambling, only to be cut off by Madison, whose voice, usually gentle, rose with icy authority. "Not the time, Greg." She said it twice, louder the second time. In that instant, years of carefully managed family image seemed to fracture. Suddenly, the live stream glitched, freezing Madison's face in a mask of barely contained fury. For a few moments, all I could do was stare at the frozen image, feeling oddly vindicated, like the reality behind the curtain was finally visible to everyone, not just me. That moment became more than just a family mishap. Within hours, clips of the confrontation began circulating online, tagged wedding fail and bridezilla exposed. It was strange seeing our private pain become public entertainment, dissected by strangers. Part of me felt sorry for Madison, thrust into a spotlight she never wanted, her picture-perfect day, now a meme. But part of me understood finally how much effort goes into holding up a facade, and how quickly it can collapse. Real life doesn't pause for perfect moments. It reveals the cracks we work so hard to hide. What I learned that day is this: perfection is a brittle mask, and the harder we cling to it, the easier it shatters. Madison's wedding, meant to be a symbol of unity and love, became a lesson in humility for our entire family. There's freedom in letting go of appearances, in accepting that sometimes chaos is the only honest thing. As the dust settled, I realized this wasn't the end of our story, but the messy, necessary middle. And in that chaos, I began to see the possibility of something real, something more honest emerging from the ruins. The days after the wedding felt surreal, as if the whole family had been thrust onto a stage we never auditioned for. The video of Madison's meltdown spread quickly across social media. Strangers debated in the comments, speculated about the Kitten Club reference, and turned a family's pain into public gossip. Mom called it a nightmare, her voice brittle with worry about what friends, co-workers, and neighbors might think. Our dad, who usually kept to himself, retreated even further, avoiding phone calls and spending hours in the garage, tinkering with old radios, and refusing to talk about the wedding at all. For Madison, the pressure became overwhelming. She deactivated her Instagram, canceled her honeymoon, and started attending therapy sessions with Tyler to try to repair the trust that had shattered so publicly. Even their wedding venue felt the sting. Bad reviews and memes about the disaster wedding led to cancellations, and eventually the elegant hall closed its doors. Watching all of this from the outside, I was struck by how quickly the world moves on from a scandal, but how slowly those who lived it can heal. The family group chat, once busy and cheerful, became eerily silent. We weren't the only ones to experience this kind of public unraveling. I remembered reading about other families whose private moments exploded online: a father's toast gone wrong at a graduation, a sibling fight at a baby shower, even a marriage proposal that ended in tears instead of cheers. Sometimes these viral clips faded in days, but for those involved, the shame and hurt lingered much longer. It made me wonder about the cost of turning every celebration into content of living for the approval of likes and shares instead of genuine connection. From all this chaos, I learned something valuable about forgiveness and resilience. Scandals force us to face truths we'd rather ignore. They expose our weaknesses, but also give us a chance to start over a little wiser and hopefully a little kinder. I realize that healing, whether for a person, a relationship, or even a reputation, doesn't happen overnight. It's a process made of small steps and honest conversations. And sometimes it means letting go of what we once thought was perfect. Our family, for all its flaws, now had a chance to rebuild on more honest ground. As the weeks passed, I found myself reflecting not just on the pain, but also on the freedom that came with letting our masks slip. There was relief in not having to pretend anymore and allowing the world to see us as we really were: messy and imperfect, but still standing. That shift opened a door for me too. A door leading to a new way of living and loving one, where my worth didn't depend on anyone else's approval. What came next would test my courage in new ways, but I finally felt ready to choose myself, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. In the quiet aftermath of the wedding chaos, I found myself re-examining what it meant to start over. With the family distracted by their own worries, I was left with unexpected freedom and time. Instead of filling the emptiness with old routines, I began focusing on my self-exploring interests I'd shelved for years. I signed up for a pottery class at the local community center, feeling both nervous and excited as I molded clay with my hands. It was messy, imperfect work, but there was something healing about creating something just for me with no one to impress or please but myself. This small act of reclaiming space in my own life soon gave me the confidence to try more. For years, I'd quietly managed my finances, saving diligently, always imagining my future as an extension of my family's needs. Now I began searching for my own place, a little apartment or house that was entirely mine. Touring open houses became an adventure, a way to picture new possibilities. I met people who shared stories of reinvention. A woman who started her own bakery at 50, a man who left a corporate job to paint murals. Their courage inspired me to embrace change as a gift, not a punishment. Taking those first steps was frightening but also thrilling. I learned that building a life for yourself means making mistakes, asking for help, and trusting that you'll find your way. Some days I felt brave, scouring online listings and crunching numbers. Other days, the old voices of doubt would creep in, reminding me of my role as the reliable one, warning me not to risk comfort for growth. But the more I reached beyond my comfort zone, the more I realized my identity could be shaped by hope instead of habit. I was no longer just someone's daughter or sister. I was becoming the main character in my own story. Through this process, I discovered that self-worth isn't measured by how useful you are to others, but by how kindly you treat yourself. For so long, I'd believed that love meant sacrificing my needs, and that joy would come if I simply waited and gave enough. But healing, I realized, comes from doing the things that light you up, even if no one else notices. I found happiness in early morning walks, in filling my small kitchen with the smell of fresh bread, and learning how to paint sunsets that looked nothing like Madison's wedding photos. My new life was simple, but it was real. Embracing this new chapter didn't mean I forgot the past or stopped loving my family. It meant honoring my own dreams alongside theirs, letting go of guilt and welcoming possibility. Each step toward independence brought a little more confidence and peace. I began to see that reinvention isn't a one-time leap, but a series of gentle shifts moments, where you choose yourself even in small ways. This slow transformation set the stage for what came next, facing my family, not as the forgotten one, but as a whole person with a story worth telling. As I settled into my new routines, the changes within myself grew clearer. I was learning day by day that forgiveness was a process not just toward my family, but toward myself. It would have been easy to shut them out, to harden my heart and never look back. Yet something gentle inside me wanted to understand their choices. I started to see that parents are shaped by their own histories, that sisters are sometimes blinded by their own dreams, and that no one, no matter how close, can always meet every need we carry in silence. A few weeks after the wedding, Madison reached out for the first time. She sent a short, uncertain text. "I miss you. Can we talk?" We met at a quiet cafe, nerves twisting between us. She apologized, not in grand gestures, but in small, honest words. She admitted she'd been selfish, swept up in her own happiness and shame. I listened, my own walls softer than I expected. I told her how it felt to be left behind, how the silence had hurt more than any argument ever could. We cried, laughed, and began the slow work of building something new. My parents struggled too. Mom called me on a quiet Sunday evening, her voice trembling, as she confessed she hadn't realized how much she'd leaned on me, how easily she'd taken my steadiness for granted. She promised to do better, to really see me, not just for my reliability, but for my hopes, frustrations, and flaws. I knew change would be gradual. The patterns of a lifetime aren't erased in a single conversation. Still, there was comfort in honesty, in promises made face to face, rather than through rehearsed speeches. Sometimes true healing starts with a simple acknowledgement: "I see you now. I'm sorry." In time, our family gatherings shifted. There were awkward moments, of course, times when old habits resurfaced, when I had to remind myself and them that boundaries were healthy and necessary. But something had changed. My laughter was fuller, my opinions bolder, my presence unmistakably my own. We celebrated little victories. My first art show, Madison's new job, Dad fixing up his old car. I realized that a family doesn't have to be perfect or picture perfect. It only has to be willing to grow together and apart again and again. What I learned was that forgiveness isn't a gift you give for someone else's sake, but a gift you give yourself. It frees you from the past, opens your heart to new connections, and allows love to take root where resentment once lived. As I embraced this messy, imperfect healing, I saw that my value was never tied to being the silent supporter. I could be loud, joyful, and wholly myself. That realization set the stage for a final lesson, one I'm eager to share as I step forward, not as an afterthought, but as the author of my own story. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize how much my journey has changed me. I used to believe that my worth depended on how quietly I could hold my family together, how little space I took up, or how well I could hide my needs. But life has a way of teaching us, sometimes through heartbreak, that we all deserve to be seen. Through exclusion and pain, through mistakes and forgiveness, I found the courage to step into my own light, to live, create, and belong, not just in the background, but fully present in my own life. Each chapter of this story, being overlooked, making silent sacrifices, facing the sting of being left out, and surviving a very public family disaster, taught me something about strength and vulnerability. I learned that boundaries aren't barriers to love. They are invitations for others to meet you where you truly are. I learned that family can hurt us, but they can also surprise us with growth, honesty, and sometimes even a second chance. Healing, I discovered, is rarely neat or instant. It's messy, honest work that we do a little bit at a time with compassion for ourselves and others. Most of all, I hope you remember this: you are not invisible. Your story matters, even if no one has celebrated it yet. Sometimes the quietest voice holds the most powerful truth. If you've ever felt left out or unappreciated, I want you to know that your journey is worth honoring, every misstep, every risk, every small brave choice to begin again. Don't wait for permission to take up space. Start now in your own way. find what brings you joy. Seek out the people who see you and let yourself be both soft and strong. If my story resonated with you, I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me where you are in your journey or what you're learning about family forgiveness or finding your own path. Please like this video if it brought you comfort or courage, and don't forget to subscribe. There are so many more stories to tell, and I'd love for you to be part of this growing community. We're all in this together, quietly cheering each other on until the day our voices are impossible to ignore. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, sometimes the most powerful transformations begin in the quietest hearts.